Hello, and welcome back to CinemaBurger's 13 Nights of Halloween. We continue with the movie Babysitter Killer Queen. It's the sequel to the 2017 movie The Babysitter, which was a Netflix original, starring Samara Weaving and Judah Lewis. So it's been 2 years since Judah's encounter with the death cult that his babysitter was a part of, and he's been having trouble adjusting to high school. He told everybody he knew about it, and they all think he's crazy and a loser. So now, with sequels, especially comedy or horror sequels, it's hard not to repeat the first movie or to add new information. So we'll see here if the story gets advanced enough to warrant the sequel, and if it isn't just the same rehash of the first movie. So Judah does miss his babysitter since he was really close with her, and he's talking to his guidance counselor, who's also the nurse, and he's pretty funny because he's giving Judah unconventional advice. He seems to have one friend named Melanie, who is the only one who really believes him because she was there as well. And she's dating some stupid jock guy who's very dumb. So since Judah told his parents as well about this, and they don't fully believe him either, his parents are played by Ken Marino and Leslie Bibb. Now they think Judah's hallucinating and want him to take medication to stop the hallucinations and this behavior, but they mean well also. So Judah is talking to Melanie over Skype, asking about homework, and Melanie sees a bottle of lotion in the corner, and she says, "Oh, that's a big bottle of lotion," and Judah's like, "Oh, I have exceptionally dry elbows," and Melanie says, "You have sexually dry elbows?" And that's actually a legitimately funny joke, because it's a pun, and it's funny. And then the dad walks in, and he notices the lotion as well, and he thinks Melanie and Judah are together, and he's trying to be the cool dad, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I have a better lotion if you need something, wink." And Ken Marino is generally funny in this scene, and Ken Marino is funny because of his bluntness. He thinks they're sexting or something, and Judah's like, "No, I have dry elbows," and the dad is like, "Oh, because lotions used to masturbate." He just blatantly says it, and the bluntness is very refreshing. So Melanie is going to a lake with friends for the weekend and asks Judah to come because he's feeling down, and he ends up going with them, and they're playing a spin the bottle game, and Judah and Melanie end up in the closet together, so they start kissing, and it feels like a real magic moment. And up until now, it's basically just kind of like a romantic comedy, and the story is pretty engaging. We haven't been introduced to any of the elements of the first movie yet, again. And then all of a sudden, Melanie kills one of the people in the group out of nowhere. It's very gory, and Judah's like, "What the hell's happening?" And Melanie's like, "Oh, we made a pact with the devil also." So it's basically the same situation is happening again now, but with different characters. And Melanie mentions that book that they were using in the first movie. Now, earlier in the movie, they were introduced to a new student in school. She's like a loner, and she makes a joke about getting an abortion or something, and she happened to come to the lake too, but by herself, and she asks for gas for her ski boat, and happens to walk in during this bloody sacrificial scene. So she's kind of involved now in this situation as well. So now all of a sudden, as Judah is freaking out, we see the characters from the first movie that Judah supposedly killed. We see Andy Bachelor, Robbie Amell, Bella Thorne, and Hannah Mae Lee as their characters from the first movie. But we don't see Bee, the babysitter, played by Samara Weaving. We don't know where she is at this point, if she's even coming back. But the characters are back and they're still trying to kill Judah like in the first movie. But now they have new members of their cult to help. So now it's basically up to Judah and new character Phoebe to survive against these killer teens. Now, throughout the movie, it's kind of similar, like back and forth, like trying to escape and not be killed, and throughout these events, we get glimpses of why the original cult decided to sell their souls to the devil for individual reasons. Most of them, they wanted fame and stuff, and then Robbie Amell, he just wanted to kill people, which is pretty funny. And we see B going to them to offer them the deal with the devil. So we've seen Samara Weaving now in flashbacks. So we're getting interesting backstory of these characters, but so far not really advancing the story yet. So now the Phoebe character, played by Jenny Ortega, she reveals that her family died in a car crash and that she went back to the cabin because it reminds her of them, and like she's kind of alone. Now there was a love connection between Phoebe and Judah, and she reveals, like I said, she was the only one left alive and she feels guilty, and that Judah seems to be surrounded by people who murder their whole family, but in Phoebe's case it was accidental. It was because she left her stuffed animal back at the cabin. The parents went back. So it's like she feels very guilty. But that makes a connection between them, and they end up falling in love. Now throughout the movie, as Judah and Phoebe are being chased by the new and the old cult, they use a decent amount of practical effects with like blood squibs and things like that, and those look great. Like the practical effects look great, they're gory, they're fun. It's when they use computer effects for blood and stuff that it looks really cheap and like terrible. Like, I know a lot of people talk about the use of practical versus CG effects. Like when they look good, but when CG effects look bad, they look bad, and you can tell. So the special effects were inconsistent because of the different types of effects they used. So near the end of the movie, as Judah and Phoebe have taken out the new and old death cult, Melanie is the only one who seems to be left. Now it's interesting, her boyfriend and another character, they talk about not continuing to serve the cult and go do other things, and they just explode. Which is interesting, that characters pledging themselves to the devil and then going back on it, there's consequences. So that was an interesting plot point, I thought. So by the end, we're on the beach, and Melanie is there, and Phoebe and Judah are tied up. And there's these, like, stick-like figures tied up. They're supposed to be, like, sacrificial, and you see all the old cult come out of it, because they come back from the dead, because that was part of their deal with the devil. And then they start reading from this Book of the Dead. It was what they used in the first movie. And all of a sudden, the water starts to bubble, and we see Bee comes out of the water. She has come back from the dead now. Samara Weaving is back in present time. And it turns out that, well, the ritual, they need the blood of a virgin, a pure person, to live forever and make their deal with the devil. So they steal Judah's blood, and they start drinking from it, the new cult and Melanie. Now, after they drink it, they start to like bubble and explode and die. So something went wrong. It turns out Judah and Phoebe got together. They kind of make that reference when they're together earlier in the movie. And Samara Weaving reveals that she's been doing that on purpose and that she's trying to help Judah in reality. Now they show when Bee herself made a deal with the devil, she was in an accident. And now Phoebe recognizes Bee also. Now Bee was also Phoebe's babysitter. She was the one in the car with Phoebe as a kid going to get the rabbit back, and she planted the rabbit in Phoebe's locker. It was there earlier. That's why she had to go back to the cabin in the first place. And that's also why Phoebe needed gas, because Bee let out her gas. So Bee has kind of been Phoebe's guardian angel. So, because she's been trying to help her. Now, they reveal that Bee made a deal with the devil to make sure that Phoebe was okay after the car accident. Because Phoebe never saw Bee again after that. She thought that Bee was dead. So, she was... What is a little confusing, like, she made a deal with the devil to save another life. Fine. But in the first movie, she's still trying to kill Judah and everything to make the deal with the devil. Now, she reveals at the end of the first movie that when Judah was like, I loved you, and things like that, it changed Bee's heart. So, it's a little confusing, like, what were Bee's intentions to begin with? Like, you want to sacrifice yourself to the devil to save someone else, but you're still, like, killing other people? So that confused me a little bit. But upon rewatching the end once or twice, it was revealed at the end of the first movie that Bee said, like, that Judah changed her. So it had to do with not having love in your heart and to not take the easy way out. Bee thought that by trying to kill Judah and sacrifice them, she would be able to save Phoebe, or she had to actually wait for someone to fall in love with Cole. Judah plays Cole. Because, I guess, Bee didn't have love in her heart. So, and it's like taking the shortcut by trying to kill Cole instead of waiting for Cole to find love. Even rewatching it, it's still a little confusing. But it all boils down to working hard to getting what you want, not taking shortcuts. So apparently, killing Cole in the first movie was a shortcut to save Phoebe, but waiting for Cole to be not a virgin by falling in love with Phoebe and rigging the second ritual was the hard way. So, alright, I guess that kind of makes sense. But it's still a little iffy, and it requires the audience to think and figure it out, I think, like, way too much. Maybe I'm reading into this too much, but the ending, feel like it's going on a limb to justify the means by the end. So Bee redeems herself, Cole is safe, and so is Phoebe. And that the dad also has been looking for Cole, so he witnesses what happened. He sees that Bee is alive, and then the ritual happens, so he believes that all this happened. So now Cole isn't considered crazy anymore. So by the end of this movie, what do we think? I feel like revealing, like going through this whole journey and kind of repeating the first movie just for maybe 15 minutes of new information seems like a bit much. Like if they wanted to continue the story, maybe they could have done like a little comic book or like a little episode or something, but I don't think a whole movie was necessary. So for that, I gotta give this movie a 2 out of 5 burgers. Like, the movie itself, like, it wasn't shot poorly, it looked fine, there was great comedy, from like Ken Marino and everybody else, Robbie Amell. But overall, this movie can't justify its own existence, I think. For, like I said, an hour and 43-minute movie for 20 minutes of new information. And I feel like the whole trying to kill Cole again was basically an hour and 20 minutes of filler. So, I guess, I don't know if I'd recommend this movie. Like, if you're a fan of the first movie, you may like this. Like, I didn't hate this movie, but I can't figure out a reason for it to exist, and that's where my confliction comes from. So for that, I don't know if I can recommend this movie. Like, check it out if you want, but it's not necessary, I think. So, yeah. You be the judge. Comment or let me know what you think, please. Alright, I've been Scott Berger, and I'll see you next time.